The village of 1,000, they're drinking out of a hole in the ground that animals drink out of the same hole. And when animals die and the disease that's in the water already, everybody in that village gets sick. Mm-hmm. And it's those moments you question living in America. Why am I?
So we're here on Good Friday, and it's a Good Friday.
It is.
Easter's around the corner.
Yes,
It's
yes.
the best Friday of the year.
Yeah.
We're talking about Big Love today, which is a movement and a nonprofit that was originally from all the conversations we've had together, sparked by the Holy Spirit inside of you, and something that you've been working diligently at for over a decade to bring into existence so that it can evolve and grow, right, and transform and do good for people across the globe, both here and in Africa. And so do you want to share just a little bit about like what started 12 years ago and where it's come from there?
Yeah. I think my first mission trip to Africa, I really fell in love with the continent. And it was a cool experience for me to have a technology timeout with the Lord for 7 days. And it was a time to really be the hands and feet of the Lord, go serve others. But in that trip, I was the one who was served, right? I had that intimate relationship with God during this trip. And I always thought it'd be cool to set up a nonprofit where we do a couple trips a year and give people that same experience to be the hands and feet for the Lord. Because sometimes, the name Big Love, sometimes it's love thy Father with all their heart, mind, and soul.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have challenges in our journey in life of loving our Creator, right? And then our next directive is love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, you first got to love thyself well.
If you don't love yourself well, then loving your neighbor like yourself might not be that good of a thing.
Exactly, yeah. Part of the problem with our humanity, right? So it's really encompassing those things. It's a place to participate, wherever you're at in your faith journey, to really express big love to ourselves, to our Creator, to our neighbor.
When did the idea of creating something get planted in your brain? Was it your first trip 12 years ago?
No. So I was in Bible college studying Christian apologetics in California at Biola, and I was leading a small group. It was a rooted group, and we had an exercise where corporately we prayed for 1 hour, and that's a long time to pray.
Yeah.
And then individually,
60 straight minutes.
60 straight minutes, okay. Yeah. And then another 60 minutes as an individual. And I'm like, whoa, cool. All right. And during my individual 60 minutes, I prayed about 40 minutes of it was prayer and 20 minutes was like meditating, reflection, right? And in that 20 minutes, I just had a vision for the Lord that said Africa. And I knew that's where he wanted me to spend some time. And I knew his purpose for my life was something bigger than myself, bigger than my life itself, and actually the purpose for his will for my life. And I was like, all right, sweet. And so from 2017, 2018-ish to being incorporated, I think January 31st, 2025, lots of prayer, lots of things that had to happen organizational, structurally. But I did a trip in 2023 and 2024 under Big Love Uganda. Wasn't an incorporated nonprofit, and they gave us permission to use just Big Love Foundation. So that was incorporated January this year.
Big Love Uganda is Pastor Raymond's
ministry that we're partnering. So Big Love Foundation is partnering with Big Love Uganda.
Okay. Yeah. And who's Pastor Raymond? When did you meet him, and how did that relationship?
Yeah. So I met Pastor
Raymond. Because I know that's the centerpiece.
Exactly. So I met Pastor Raymond in 2012 on my first mission trip to Africa. And for over a decade, I watched his ministry from afar, had donated to his ministry. But, I wanted to make sure that when I did start Big Love, that I. with somebody that you can trust, that you have had a relationship for, a decade, and got to watch his ministry from afar and participate from afar, but also financially participate. And then, when I had that kind of vision in 2017, on that prayer experience, that's when I knew that. He was the only person I knew in Africa that I trusted. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
process of elimination. Yeah.
Choice one of one, but has
Yeah.
God blessed this and saying,
Yeah.
is that, did the trust evolved so organically,
Mhm.
from the sidelines as one of your best friends for the last 20 years ago, like my, second brother.
Yes.
And I knew you before you knew Jesus, and you knew me before I knew Jesus.
Right.
But for me, when you invited me to just participate in the vision for Big Love, I'd already witnessed you, building that vision and exploring that vision for years on your own, right? Like, this is not from what I saw you do is like, you're not giving philanthropically to some big organization that's collecting money from everybody everywhere. It's like, I know he's got other church partners, but you met Raymond, had an experience with him, fostered a relationship over time, and chose to give directly as an individual to his ministry for years.
Right.
Um, and witnessed him using that to multiply the impact that God's having on the ground in Uganda.
Yep.
And this is a man, by the way, which we'll maybe get a picture of Pastor Raymond on here. I've had a chance to speak to him a couple times and not meet him yet, but he's got 5 of his own kids.
Yeah.
And when we were on a call about a month ago, he's got 15 children that live with him.
Yeah.
In his home, because if they didn't stay with him, they wouldn't be able to go to school.
Right.
Right. And the school itself, kids live there. And so tell me a little bit about like what the actual physical impact has been with the work that's been done at the school, at the hospital, in the village.
Yeah. And so kind of back to also Raymond, on every trip I've went with, if you can imagine being alive when Jesus and his disciples were alive, when you walk into a school, a church, anywhere in Uganda with Pastor Raymond, hundreds come fleeing. And the first thing we do is pray. And so it's like being with a live rock star in today's society, but back when Jesus and the disciples were alive and they'd arrive on the new scene and all of his followers would come. I've never experienced being with another individual in that capacity. And for the right reasons. It's not because he's famous, it's because Jesus is the center and prayer is the center of his ministry.
Yeah. Well, in America, you get people flocking to celebrities and notable personalities all the time. We got social media, and here's this, maybe in this little community, it's like the superstar, but the spotlight's on Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in 2023, I took a small team of 6, a physician and a nurse and a few others. We saw about 40 patients during that trip. And so we were able to treat them just basic needs, cuts, bruises, flus, sickness. What I've learned in ministry is if you speak to someone's physical needs first, it allows the opportunity in a more connected way to speak to their spiritual needs next.
Yeah.
When we go try to share the gospel, and that's where we start with, obviously you're going to meet with resistance wherever you are on the planet. But if you speak in love to their physical needs, whether it's through education, kids' books, or whether it's through medicine, healing them of a physical ailment or giving them clean water, right?
Yeah.
So the kind of philosophy that I've learned in participating in ministry, international ministry, is speaking to their physical needs first, and then it grants you a much warmer environment to speak to their spiritual needs. So in 2020, so we brought over 2,000 books in 2023, started 3 or 4 different libraries. You had donated, I think we did about 15 iPads, computers, cell phones, technology. So for them to be able to, pastors to read the Bible, to have access to the Bible, for the kids to have access to books and those things. That's one of the ways to fight severe poverty is through education, right?
Did the community have books, iPads, computers, like access to that prior?
No. So there was a 180 kids school that had 0 books and an 80-person school that had 0 books. In the church, they had Bibles, but they didn't really have a library. So we really were able to spread out those 3,000 books and tablets.
You said 2 schools with 180 kids with 0 books each.
Yeah, 180 plus 80. So
260 kids going to school, and a school is vacant of books.
Correct.
It's really hard for Americans to like comprehend
that.
the level of let's say isolation to our world and way of life that exists in so many unreached people groups and in places across the globe.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so that was huge for them just to see kids being able to read Bible stories and, bring 3D, right, our belief in Christianity in books, and then also through just learning, basic learning skills. Now, they take school really seriously, so I don't wanna take away from they many of them wear dress code and they don't miss if they're sick type of thing, so they're very attentive to
Hmm.
school, especially kindergarten through eighth grade. But the schools themselves didn't have extra books. I mean, they had books that they taught from, but they didn't have like fun books and educational books and things that we're used to in America here.
Yeah. Yeah. So the priority level of education is super high, but the access to resources
Correct.
is super low.
Right.
And that includes electricity.
It does. Yeah. So we just did two projects. So I've been solar actually with you. I started in 2020 and started working after residential solar on the sales side. I started working for a manufacturing company in 2024. And through some of their donations, we were able to utilize Big Love in the nonprofit to do an off-grid project for the 180 person school. They had no electricity at all, and 90 of those kids lived there. They board there. That's their
Hmm.
lodging, and so they've never had lights at all. So we were able to do an off-grid solar battery project at that school. At medical clinic at this hospital. 90 kids are born every year at this hospital. They frequently go 3 or 4 days without power at all. And, when you have children prematurely, it takes ventilation, it takes
Yeah.
electricity to keep people alive.
Yeah.
So I know these systems.
Newborns and elderly and other people alike, right?
Correct. So, since we've installed that a few weeks ago, we wiped out a $200 electric bill for them, right? Which monetarily is it's a lot of money over there.
Yeah.
More importantly, I know these are actually saving lives and
Yeah.
keeping people
Yeah.
alive as you come to a hospital when you're in critical or urgent situations.
Yeah. So the hospital went from paying a $200 bill a month to having close to nothing
Free electricity.
free
Yep.
electricity.
Yep.
And not only was it $200 a month, but it was also frequent scenarios that would, without power, that would cause a loss of life, right?
Correct.
People would die because there was no power.
A month before it was installed, they had no power for 3 days.
Jeez.
Think about all the years before that and weeks before that, how many times they didn't have power and how many critical situations that people just lost life when we could prevent it by having power.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What was the functionally or operationally, what was the investment for? Do you have like a reasonable kind of guess as to what the investment was to make that possible at that hospital?
So EG4 is the company I work with, and
Yeah.
James Showalter is the founder. And I actually met him before I started working there, and shared with him some of the vision of Big Love. And when I started working there, he was very generous. We donated about $40,000 worth of inverters and batteries. We got it shipped from to Uganda, which is
How long did that take?
landlocked. That was a 4 or 5 month venture, a long project, because it's landlocked. The shipment came actually into Kenya, so that's step one, getting it through customs, and then move it from customs in Kenya to Uganda is a whole nother project in itself. And so, through his generosity, we were able to do that school, a church, um, the hospital, and we're in the middle of drilling of right now a solar powered water well for a village of 1,000. And this will serve clean water for 20 years. It's on an acre of land, and that was donated as well. And that'll eventually be a church plant and a school. And the community right now, the village of 1,000, they're drinking out of a hole in the ground. The animals drink out of the same hole. And when animals die, um, and the disease that's in the water already, everybody in that village gets sick.
Hmm.
Um, so now with a clean water well on a village on an acre of land, um, that'll be able to serve that community for about 20 years. It's going to be solar battery powered. And so it'll be the community hub.
Yeah.
We're hopeful this will be somewhat of a pilot for the country of Uganda. There's about 20,000 villages, small villages, where this pilot could be implemented.
So what's the last time you've considered the water that you drink in America eh, in any way other than is it cold enough for me or not, right? Like we are incredibly spoiled when it comes to just the basic necessities required for a safe life in America. And this is almost in any place in America, like even
Right.
the roughest of communities and neighborhoods. And there's some rare exceptions like in the Flint and stuff, but like drinking water in Africa is, I mean, it's the cause of disease, it's the cause of death or lack thereof. And from what I understand from Pastor Raymond, some of the maybe areas that have running water are 4, 5, 10 miles away, and kids walk to get that. Right
Right.
when I was in Africa a few years ago, it was you couldn't drive 100 yards without seeing a child and a jug of water
Right.
or an empty jug,
Yep.
and they're walking for miles. And he said, children get abducted, bad things happen,
Hmm.
like families lose children just because of the need to get water.
Right.
And to plant a well, something as simple. And for me, I heard it. I think maybe everybody's heard about water wells,
Hmm.
but if you really slow down to understand the impact, and maybe ask the question, why are water wells like this thing that so many nonprofits do? Like, why is it the big thing? It's because clean water, as simple as that sounds, is essential to have a shot at living a healthy life and or living at all. And these people in rural areas across the world, it's a real challenge and it's a dangerous situation for them.
Right.
And so when you put the well there, what happens in the community?
So it changes everything for the community. So we're able to now bring power through solar and battery to that community, so they can charge phones, they can charge tablets, they can have a safe place to come do homework, they can have a hot area to warm up water and to do cooking, and so it's almost like a community fellowship hub.
Hmm.
Whereas the current area is just a big hole in the ground, kind of like a creek, plastic bottles. No American would even consider drinking water out of that water hub
Hmm.
in this area. And so the church, it was donated land, an acre to the church. And so they would actually eventually are going to put a small dwelling on that acre to have a church and to have a school. So it'll be a safe place for the community and a community hub, to have a basic need of clean water.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to hear about, Jesus, the living water,
Yeah.
as well. So it's kind of speaking to their physical need first to be able to speak to their spiritual need. Eventually, over time, they'll hear the good news.
Yeah.
So it's a cool church planning project where we could do a handful of these a year. It's a way to grow. It's a way to give people a basic tenant that we all expect to have here as provided by our government in America.
Mhm.
It's a way to help out that, but also be a church plant as well for a community. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
As this kind of grew on your heart over the last decade, and in 2017 you saw Africa,
Hmm.
at what point, because there are a lot of nonprofits, there's a lot of
Hmm.
Christian
Yep.
nonprofits, many of them do great work, some of them don't do as great of work, but why for you, and I don't know if this is personal or spiritual, um, why pursue something new? Like why found and bring to life big love rather than attach to another organization that's already there? Do you know where that came from?
Yeah. You and I knew each other, we'll call it pre-Jesus,
Yes.
right? And
PJ.
yeah. And out of my commitment, um, after I got baptized in 2009, um, I knew my behavior as a Christian had to completely change, right? And so inside of, creating a new possibility of love and compassionate grace, right? Out of that, my community that knew me before pre-Jesus, right? It would take time for them to live into and see that filter, to see my behavior change over time,
Mm.
right? And so, kind of fast forwarding from 2009 to 2017, um, I wanted to create a structure um, where selfishly for myself, right, that I could maximize my servanthood, okay, to the Lord and be in alignment with his purpose for my life, right?
Mhm.
So there's lots of things nonprofits can do, right? But one of the primary things that I wanted Big Love to do, now it might do many things, but the primary things is inside of the Great Commission, right? Empowering, you know, disciples and then baptizing people in the name of Jesus. And so church plant water wells was a no-brainer for me because of financially, I don't need $500,000. I can do a church plant and a clean water well for under $15,000
Mhm.
in Africa. And, if that's 100 to 200 new believers over a couple years, the eternal ROI, right?
Yeah.
Return on investment, my own funding, I know is going to go to empowering Christian leaders
Yeah.
and baptizing new believers to hear the good word,
Yeah.
good
You
news.
coined the term, right? Maybe somebody else coined it too, but
Yeah.
internal ROI, EROI.
Yes.
Uh, because money, we're talking about money, but money is a store of value.
Hmm.
And in most cases, money is a store of value out of some outcome that was created or some time that was invested, right?
Right.
So we all make whatever we make per year. You can divide it into hours, but ultimately, when I hear eternal ROI, it has less to do with money and more to do with the resource, right? Just the resource of
Mhm.
time and investment that it took to create the money. And if for $15,000, we're able to bring Jesus into the lives and give access to a belief system and a hope in Christ that creates eternal salvation at, sub $100 per individual. I think in America it's 100 grand or something.
Right.
So,
It is.
and in the eyes of God, all of his children are equal. So you saw this as a way to have some control, perhaps I'll use that, and some more clear directives in maximizing the ROI on the investment of time and resources and money from people.
Exactly that for my own personal funds, but then involving friends, family, and churches across church lines and across different state lines. I wanted a vehicle that people can trust that the funds that are being donated are going to go to direct impact.
Hmm.
And it is exciting when you can say, "Hey, yeah, I gave 10 grand this year, and that 10 grand is going to impact at least 100 new believers over the next 2 or 3 years," right?
Hmm.
Now, there's lots of causes on the planet: water, education, lots of different things. And Big Love might do many of those things, but I wanted to make sure to keep the main thing,
Yeah.
and the primary thing, which, I know we can drive. And Africa is just the first continent. I fast forward to 10 to 20 years out with my wife and kids, and I'm single now. So I'm speaking in the future if we don't, die or rapture up tomorrow or not. But I want to maximize my time on this planet, and the different continents that we can make a difference,
Hmm.
and partnering with friends and family um, that can participate in that alongside of their church. This isn't replacing your church or your church community or church family. This is an opportunity outside of that to express the body of the church. Lots of people have lots of different skills and different ones in uh, the body of the church,
Hmm.
and so it's being able to use, for myself as a visionary, as admin, as carrying out some of the primary things. Big Love is um, a vehicle where 10 other visionaries can participate
Hmm.
and run with other objectives, other things in other states and other countries. So,
I think that's one of the beautiful things when you look at the business world in America and you've got like a startup, and why would somebody go work with a startup when they could maybe get twice or triple the salary, and work with some established juggernaut? And oftentimes the answer is because they want to be part of creating something.
right.
And in a business sense, sometimes it's I want the equity or the upside, but here it is, the equity or the upside of a nonprofit is the impact,
Yes.
right? And I think as I've asked myself the question, like why say yes? You're a best friend, so that's a big part of it, but also there's only so much time and resource that we have to give in our life. And so why lean into a new organization is because similar to you, like I have a drive to create.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's an opportunity for people who have that desire and drive to create, to get involved with organizations that are being created and movements that are being expanded. And you probably will attract different people into the ecosystem than a massive, worldwide organization with, 10,000 volunteers would at this point. And
Right.
so it's a cool. And then I think the other piece that I've noticed is the ability to be so close to the work and the outcome that's being done. Like, I'll never forget the first time you sent me that video, and maybe we could show it, but you sent, it was a few $1,000s to the school.
The 180 kid school.
And
Yep.
you bought them, it was chairs.
It was all of their desks and chairs inside the new dwelling that they just built.
Yeah. And this new dwelling, by the way, is not the type of dwelling that we're accustomed to in America. Right?
One room schoolhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With walls, no walls, right?
Had walls,
Did
yeah,
have walls,
but
okay.
one room schoolhouse,
Yeah.
Just a big, maybe 2,000 square feet on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember the video, it's all these kids just, grinning ear to ear, and they said, "Thank you, Zachary Spain."
Thank you, Zachary Spain, for buying us this. We love you. Jesus bless you. Thank you, Zachary Spain, for buying us this. We love you.
And I think for me, I'm like, man, that's so cool to be so close and to be able to experience, right, the joy of giving through the gratitude of receiving.
Right.
And what have you found in the people in Uganda in terms of the the recognition of maybe the gifts or the opportunities that are being brought to them through the ministry? Is it a grateful community?
Yeah, I think humanity's one of our most challenging sins is pride, right? And when I visit Uganda, the humble hearts and grateful and joyful hearts that they have, seemingly with nothing, right? We would say in today's U.S. society, they have nothing compared to what we have, right? But to see their joy and happiness and fulfillment with the simple things, every time I go, I'm like, wow, who has it better, right? I go to lunch, I'm going to lunch in Scottsdale, Arizona today, and I'll be in a restaurant with 100 people, and 10 people are probably complaining about their food not being correct or how they prefer it. When you go over there, like the utmost humbled hearts and grateful hearts with nothing, right? I had one pastor had us over for dinner, and it was a very proud moment for him and his wife. And we get into his house, okay? It's a 10 by 10, dirt floors and no window.
10 by 10.
10 by 10.
His home is a 10 by 10.
10 by 10. We sat on a dirt floor, right? And no windows, no glass windows. They cooked the meal outside on a fire, and they were so proud of this moment, not because of the things that they had, but the brothers that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those moments you question living in America. Why am I, in this society with money and materialism, sometimes I'm like, man, I could just, start a Amish Uganda community and live off the land for 10 grand a year. That's probably not going to happen, but maybe I'll have a vacation house.
What I hear is so we go and the mission is to attend to physical needs. That creates the space and the environment to attend to spiritual needs.
Mm-hmm.
But as you're attending to the physical needs, and
Right.
as we move to the spiritual needs, what's happening inside of those that volunteer their time
Mm-hmm.
and that travel is very spiritual.
Yeah, it's love.
Yeah.
It's the unconditional agape love,
Yeah.
right? That God, I'm sure I'm not a parent. You're a parent. You can probably speak to this more than I can, but the type of love that a parent has for their child, that unconditional love.
Mhm.
Imagine a society where you can actually love thy neighbor, love thyself, and love thy God with that similar agape love. It's a to practice that. And
Yeah.
going on these mission trips, when you go over there, I said earlier that I go to serve them, but I'm the one really getting served.
Yeah. So how is that? Tell me more about where do you see your heart and your faith being expanded?
Yeah, I think just to greater depths of intimacy with the Lord. When you go on a trip, you get to be the hands and feet of the Lord,
Mhm.
right? You actually get to go physically love on these kids, um, other adults, other Christians, other non-believers, through, whether it's medical that we're doing, whether it's educational, whether it's, ribbon cutting for the clean water well, solar powered, you know, off-grid structures. Um, and you get to be the hands and feet and just, have an intimate relationship. I remember one of my first trips, we were in the deep sticks, and every time we went to a new village, couple hundred people, we'd start off and it'd be like an hour plus prayer session, and individuals would come with certain prayer requests. And one man, probably mid 50s, and the thing I like doing about Uganda is they're all taught English, so you can have a conversation with the local people there without an interpreter. And he came to me, and when he corporately in public, he asked for a very vague medical prayer.
Mhm.
So I pulled him aside after that and just asked him, how's things going? And he shared, he's like, in my village, I'm kind of a black sheep. Nobody knows this, but I have AIDS. But if anybody knew it, I'd be ostracized, I'd be abandoned.
Mhm.
Little did he know that he was already kind of doing that to himself. And I didn't know what to do. As he's telling me this is probably a 2 or 3 minute interaction, but I'm praying as he's talking to me on Holy Spirit, what do I do? And so I just opened up in prayer with him and reminded him the promises of eternity where there'll be no pain or suffering.
Mhm.
And this guy snapped and just turned into like a 4-year-old boy opening Christmas presents. Um, his entire, attitude, thoughts, everything shifted in that moment. It was just a brief interaction. But it just reminds us that, there's more to this world than, the work or the daily hustle or the material or the rat race or having a successful business. God's economy for success is very different than sometimes our own economy for success. And so when you go on a trip like that, you're really present to, um, you know, humans and making an impact and really people that can love and care, and have special moments like that, can help us heal in our relationship on our spiritual journey
Yeah.
from past trauma, from past childhoods, from upbringings, mom, dad, past business partners, whatever it may be, that trip is like a transformational opportunity to, you know, heal and better love thyself, love thy God, and love thy neighbor.
Yeah. The English speaking, I went to Togo 3 years ago now,
Yeah.
and that's French speaking in Africa, West Africa. And I mean, it was a beautiful experience. I it was amazing. And I couldn't understand
Right.
without an interpreter.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I have not yet gone to Uganda with you, but that's going to happen soon, or with Big Love, is the ability to communicate
Mm-hmm.
just as easily as you communicate with your neighbor or somebody that you meet on the street in America.
Right.
And the ability for those interactions to touch and move and transform your heart and your faith
Mm-hmm.
seem much more prevalent in an area that you can understand and communicate freely.
Yeah. Yeah. I've did 2 trips to Haiti. They speak Creole there. And I've done trips to Cuba and Mexico. And all are great trips with the folks that I go on the trip with all the other volunteers from America. And it's somewhat limited when you can't communicate with the local folks that you're serving,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So once I did the trip to Uganda and I was able to go in the middle of nowhere and have conversation. This person never saw an American
Yeah.
or a white person, Caucasian before, right? And to have a conversation with him in English with both of our native tongues, it was pretty cool. you
Kind
know,
of mind blowing too.
it is. Yeah. I was like, wow. Yeah.
How do you relate the experience you had with the people in Uganda, and when you come back to America, do you have a different type of compassion, understanding, on all of the friends and family and people we interact with here?
I do. Yeah. It's, you kind of get a spiritual high for like 3 to 6 months. At least I do. Cause I'm sharing those experience with our brothers over international, with our friends and family here in America. Um, and by sharing those experiences, you're also connecting with them,
Mm.
in a different way. And we're able to help shift someone else's perspective by sharing something inspiring, making a difference. Love thy neighbor, love thyself, love thy God. When you're sharing inside of those things for big love, but out in the world, um, it's contagious.
Mhm.
People want to be, there's lots of bad news on the planet. You can
Mhm.
turn on any channel and hear tons of bad news. Very rarely do we hear good news
Yeah.
or people that are making a positive difference, right? And so it's a way to kind of change that perspective and narrative and have um, some impactful, inspiring things happening in one's life.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. The One of the experiences I had when I was in Togo was immense and consistent gratitude, and in many ways a sense of undeservingness, meaning, uh, and I think people all recognize this, but we don't take the time to really deeply contemplate it.
Mhm.
Like you did not deserve to be born in America.
Right.
I did not deserve to be born in America. We did not deserve to be born at this point in time when, I've got a wife and 4 children. I didn't deserve to be born in a time where childbirth didn't take the lives of, I don't know, 1 in 3, 1 in 5, 1 in 6 women that went through that, miracle process.
Right.
We didn't choose any of that, and they didn't choose to be born. People in Uganda didn't choose to be born in Uganda. And when you are put face to face with like the reality, the normal that they live,
Hmm.
one thing is like, you're like, how did I get so lucky?
Right.
And whatever messes I have going in my life, whatever tragedy I'm in the middle of, whatever thing I fear, it's like, would I trade any of it for what these folks are living into every single day?
Right.
And then what's even more shocking is you see the smiles
Yeah.
and the joy and the faith.
Hmm.
And that was deeply touching for me, is like you see faith and happiness and gratitude and worship that, like, man, sounds nothing like the A plus, worship service I'm at every single, I mean, depending on how you measure it. Like, I love good worship. And if you just listen to the audio track of what I attend on Sundays and what I got in Togo, you know, it is not what Americans would consider great. But man, when you're there,
Hmm.
it's joyous, it's joyful,
Yeah.
it's beautiful, and they are intensely, oftentimes happy people.
Hmm. You go through different emotions when you visit areas on the planet that are in severe poverty. And we have those in America as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's a sadness or a level of like, wow, we're so grateful for the whatever, the, the hand that you got dealt in life versus they do. But after that level of kind of like sadness or feeling sorry for
Mm-hmm.
them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing, visually seeing all of the negative things being in severe poverty. When I go and hang out with them, the level of joy
Yeah.
and laughter and happiness. I was in one village and they were handing around this baby. I'm like, who's the mother? Like, they literally didn't know who the mother of the child is. They just all loved on the child. Like, it was a community, like the joy, the singing, the um, connection was very different.
Mm.
And so now when I go on trips, like I told you this before, I don't feel sorry for them any longer. I feel sorry for the guys I'm going to see later today in Scottsdale
Yeah.
that don't.
Yeah. There's a level of envy.
They have everything.
There's a little level of envy, right, for what they have that so many here in America don't.
Yep.
And a beautiful part of doing mission work and supporting it is, the people that go over and do the work or do the service, and you're going to continue. Big Love is going to continue to sponsor and support trips, and we want more and more people going on them. Like the work that gets done inside of you,
Yeah.
and then you come back and you're like, man, I had this small, beautiful, like, not that envy is beautiful, but like,
Yeah.
what was it that was so attractive to me about that way of life and about the philosophy and faith that they have? And if you don't see that up close in person, it's really hard to experience it internally the same way.
Well, and I took my father on the last trip. My sister came with me and my cousin Molly, right? Now, I'll probably never be able to be on a weekday. It's not a vacation, a mission trip with my father, and to experience that many moments together, serving other people. And so it's also designed to have call it a technology timeout from life, 7 to 10 days. When the people that you come with on your trip, whether it's your spouse or your kids or friends, those are memories, right, in your own healing journey it's such a special thing to do, on the trip, to have serving others. But again, you're the one getting served. So, selfishly, I like bringing my friends and family on these trips, because the camaraderie and the bond that you have with the people on the trip and the people that you're serving and developing relationship with that are local, international, it's such a special treat.
Yeah. Recently in the news, there's been some reports about these nonprofits that spend 97%. Sometimes there was one that spent 98.5% of all the dollars they fundraised went to soliciting dollars. Crazy, right? And there's this list of top 50. I saw Rogan talking about it. When it comes to giving, when it comes to what the money's being used for, is there any personnel overhead at Big Love? And when there is at some point in the future, how do you anticipate navigating that, and where do you want the money to run the business to come from? Run the nonprofit, right? The business part of the nonprofit.
It's a good question. Yeah. So right now, the board is examining serving with the funds 36 staff over in Uganda. And those staff are composed of teachers at a Christian school, ordained actual pastors, right, and the staff at the church. And so that fits inside of the Great Commission, right? Really. And then the funds are going towards church plants and some of the other things inside the mission trips. As far as Big Love growing, right? Right now it's 100% volunteer efforts from board members and people that participate, friends and family. I do see at some point it being big enough to have staff members. And those are likely going to be, spouses, friends, family, trusted individuals. And, I've seen the numbers on some of these large corporations, right? Whether it's Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and out of your dollar, when more than 90, when 90 cents is going to some overhead or salaries and 10% is going to that, that's opposite of what it ought to be, in my opinion. At some point in life, it'd be cool to do reverse tithing, right? Live off the 10%, give the 90. And so with that kind of a mindset, I want to make sure that the dollars that do come in impact real change and real impact, and that we stay in alignment, inside of the Great Commission. And so, do I see it growing and needing staff? I'd love that. And we need to be super responsible, for that.
In my mind, and we're still early enough that it's all is just a future plan and an idea.
Yeah.
But when I look at an organization like Give Power, which builds water wells and solar, or they do solar and solar power and battery storage, and I think water wells in third world countries as well. And they do a lot of work in the solar space with solar companies.
They do, yeah.
But their operational budget's covered by, I believe, one single donor, right? And so their operations are all covered. So every dollar and everything else that's given is being used for the mission. And that's my hope for Big Love, is that we find our path to where we separate funding. And if somebody's got, the clarity and the means and the resources to fund the overhead part, which right now is zero, but at some point we hope we hope that it's conservative and large, that we can fund that, but then make sure that we put every dollar that's given with the intent to go and be invested into the communities, that every dollar, 100% of every dollar goes there.
Right.
And that we keep people connected to the good that they're doing with those dollars. Because I think there's also an opportunity with the smaller organization and nonprofit to allow for a deeper connection to the work, right? The video that I referenced that you had, I think that is a gift that can be given. We've talked about this recently. Like, how do you give that gift? Somebody that maybe can't make it over to Africa, but has it on their heart to give and make a difference. How can we better connect them to the difference that they're making with video and pictures and just ways to get them to like recognize and feel the impact of their dollars. And so that's,
yeah, I think that's a good point. I've given to Give Power myself too, and part of the vision has been, using their model in some sense. Ours just adds the church plant, right? Yeah. Which is more important to me on the not just the philosophical side, but the theological, speaking to the spiritual needs of ones.
Doesn't matter how much water or clean water you have, everybody on this planet's going to die.
Exactly.
Everybody, you, me, everybody we've ever met. And so what happens next is the heart that drives this.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the other thing you said too, for me, getting that direct impact and seeing where the dollars are going. I think one of the things Big Love would love to do is having a website and or an app that every dollar that you give, the app will be able to connect you with, maybe it's a child sponsorship. Maybe it's an actual video from the church on what the money went towards, but you get to see a direct live, whether it's through, video, letters, but you get to see a direct impact of where your dollar goes. I think that's one of the things that the common church in the United States could do a better job at as well, because I know you see millions of tithes go forth and you can sometimes see their transparent budgets, but you don't always see the behind the scenes and how many people got baptized and all of those things. You don't always get present to that. So I think Big Love can actually do that, be able to provide, actual instant feedback for ones that want to see where their dollar is going and what kind of impacts it's actually making.
What do you think is the tipping point for people in your experience when they decide to get involved, to make a difference, to contribute? Like, have you noticed any common trends with when their heart opens up and says, it's time for me to make a difference?
Yeah, I think for myself, for the friends and family that have come on trips, right? There's talking verbally about coming on the trips, but they also see the sanctification that's happening in you, and they want a slice of that for themselves. And some, to your point, can't go on a trip physically. Health restrictions, they might not allow them to go to Uganda, but through you and through participating, and sometimes for them to participate, they can, this points them back to Jesus and our sanctification process and developing our character, and being able to express that. We're not all perfect. Big Love isn't for a bunch of perfect people to come join and come on a mission trip. No,
not all perfect. None of us are perfect.
It's for the broken to come practice this and be the hands and feet and be healed, through it. My second cousin Molly came on the trip, and she's just somebody that super inspired me. She's gone through and beat cancer 3 times. And the second time she got cancer, stole from her the opportunity to be a mother herself, right? And I shared with her videos and photos. And on her third fight, I promised her I would take her on the next trip. And for her, to fight that third fight of cancer, it was definitely a divine thing, because she was fixated on a year of battling cancer with these videos of these kids, for her to be able to go physically be there. And so I know for her, that was something that she latched on to continue to fight that fight for life itself. And then getting to see her flourish on the trips, she busted out. So kids in Uganda, not all of them had seen bubbles. And we're at this school of 200 kids, and she was blowing bubbles and laughing, and everything that captured. And then she was a teacher by trade, so she was reading from these books that we're giving them. And just those two experiences, I'll never forget those.
Have you known somebody in all of your life? Well, maybe we'll keep it to big love, but then you can expand it. 2 questions. Has anybody that you've traveled to Uganda with regretted their commitment and the time and the money they invested to do it?
Not yet.
And beyond that, do you know of anybody that's looked back at their time? I mean, I can't personally think of somebody that says that trip was a poor use of my time, energy, and resources, if the trip is to serve.
Yeah, no, I think we get served. I think it's a process. I think some people might be, their hearts, I've been in seasons where my heart was not as soft or cold, and an experience like this can help soften a heart. So many times, first couple days of a trip, one might be complaining about their feet or the travel or the airports. And as soon as they hit the kids and hit the process, day 3, 4, 5, they change.
Mm-hmm.
All are welcomed on the trip. So
Yeah.
that's to be expected.
Yeah. That's great. So what's your biggest hope for Big Love?
Yeah, I think, that's an interesting question. It's kind of, we have these dreams in life, right? And pre-Jesus dreams was like, oh, be a CEO of a multi-million-dollar and all of these things, right? Have the $10 million house, all these dreams. And then post-Jesus, right? The dreams that I've had are more placed on my heart by him. And that has already happened at Big Love. And so when you talk about growth in anything, sure, it's exciting, but I think here the growth is for more people to participate, to the joy that this has given me to serve. Serve something bigger than myself. And so that growth is just more interactions and more friends and family that can participate, pointing them to Jesus. And then also, the impact that we can make, be the hands and feet on the ground in international missions. The sky's the limit there. So, I've had to temper some of the, call it vision or dream, because I'm really just inside of, the Holy Spirit has really directed a lot. I've had to take a step back and be extremely patient. Some of these things have taken years. And so I'm just excited for whatever the Holy Spirit wants to use inside of me and through me and the others that participate. So I've had to do a bit of reining back that, but you know me,
Yeah.
I'm a visionary. And so, managing millions of dollars for the nonprofit and fully participating in the nonprofit at some point in my life is definitely, or at least 90% of my time. I think I'll always be in a business sector. I'm just God gave me the gift of business entrepreneurship. And so I don't know that I'll be over 100%. I'm not like a speaker, pastor type, but everybody in the kind of church body has its different strengths. And this is really allowed for me to express some of the spiritual gifts that God's given me and expand into new gifts,
Yeah.
but also expose what others that might not have been practicing those gifts that God given them. It's really exciting to participate, brainstorm, collaborate with them and seeing, the gifts that God given them. Because the church body, not everybody's wired the same way. We need all of the different things, not just everybody to have, the same type of, vision or whatnot. So
It's great. So the vision, if I could restate it, would be to use Big Love and the movement that it represents as a vehicle to invite others inside of a movement to join that helps them get in touch with the gifts that God's given them, to encourage and support them giving those gifts to others.
Right.
And as they give them, to handle physical needs and then create opportunity, space, and an environment to attend to spiritual needs, and ultimately to bring a deeper relationship and sanctification to those on the American side and on the Uganda side and whatever side there is in the future, and to do all of that in the name of God, and to remember that life we have right now is not the most important one.
Exactly. Yeah. Life's precious. We might have another hour, we might have another couple of days, and we might have another 50, 60 years, right? Regardless, living a life inside of God's will for our life versus our own will has been my prayer. And so helping others, using Big Love as a vehicle to whatever, whether it's somebody here in Phoenix that wants to serve battered women or veterans in this region, to run with that initiative, come to Big Love, come to the board, put together a plan and collaborate and make an impact there, whether it's local here or international. Uganda was just the first continent to partner with, because we had a trusted person on the ground there. But yeah, it's
Grow where you're planted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing. I love you. I
love
love
you
what
too.
this is. I love the mission, the vision, and the impact that Big Love's making.
Awesome. Yeah, I love you too, brother.
Yeah. Cool. Cheers.
Yeah.
That's good.